All right. So, gentlemen, this past year we were treated to some big moments in MMA, and the ladies had a lot to do with that. Our first topic is about MMA Junkie's choice for Female Fighter of the Year in 2022, Zhang Weili. It's already been released. UFC strawweight, the UFC strawweight champion went 2-0, culminating with her recapturing the title in November at UFC 281, where she submitted Carla Esparza. What did you think of Weili's accomplishments in 2022? Was she your choice for the award, or did you submit a vote for another athlete? That's right. We're a democracy here at MMA Junkie. We voted, so sometimes we agree, sometimes we don't. Danny, you're leading off.
Yeah, she was my female fighter of the year. She, in my opinion, undoubtedly had, at least in the UFC, the best year as far as the ladies are concerned. She got a phenomenal win over Joanna Jędrzejczyk with a beautiful spinning back fist that needs to be talked about as one of the best finishes of 2022, and send her to retirement in a fight that a lot of people thought it was going to be somewhat or a lot more competitive, given their first fight, which was one of the greatest female fights in the history of the sport. And then she goes and fights Carla Esparza, who was on a great run, looked solid, and captured the belt. And basically, Zhang Weili beat her in her own game. She decided to oblige and grapple with Carla Esparza, out wrestled her in many situations, and ended up submitting her, a fighter that is known for her grappling. Also, I want to mention that Larissa Pacheco, and that's why I said Zhang Weili had the best year of the ladies in the UFC. Larissa Pacheco over at PFL had a fantastic run as well. 4-0, dethroning Kayla Harrison, who had won the previous championships, the previous seasons. I mean, just a spectacular run. But in my opinion, what Zhang Weili, as far as quality of opponent, what she did, it just has a lot more weight than what Larissa Pacheco did. So in my mind, and my vote went to Zhang Weili. She's the female fighter of the year.
Well, I'm glad you cleared that up a little bit, Danny, because right away in the chat room, and you can participate via the chat, Prince Vegata-san says 2 fights, though? So maybe he was already intimating that perhaps Pacheco's 4-0 run was more impressive. Nolan, what'd you think?
Yeah, no, I think, Zhang Weili is the correct choice here. There's obviously, when it comes down to these awards, you're going to see throughout the show that there's sometimes you have to figure out a conversion rate in your head, right? Like, how much does 3 non-title fights in PFL weigh against fighting Joanna in a 3-round fight? Like, there's all these things that go into it that maybe to one person is thinks one way and one person thinks another. That's the fun of these awards. But I think with this one, I feel pretty confident saying that Zhang Weili is the right choice here. I think if you look at the caliber of competition that she fought, I mean, Larissa Pacheco beat Kayla Harrison. That is a great feat. I think, obviously Kayla, nobody out of the dozen plus people that Kayla fought could do that. But I just think fighting Joanna, fighting Carla Esparza, and dominating the way that she did, just looking like a beast, coming back from, kind of a bumpy few fights for Zhang Weili to come back and get her belt back. I just think that I got to give it to her. I think that that's a pretty comfortable choice, where some of these other categories, I think, are a little bit closer.
All right. And like I said, it's in the books. We already released it on MMA Junkie, but it's still fun to at least express our thoughts. So there's nothing really Goes can say or me that will change anything, but still Goes. Was there anything last minute that you had for any other fighter, or were you on team Zhang Weili as well?
This one probably made the most sense out of all of them, just because of how destructive she was. It's 2 wins. Yeah, I know that was a gripe in the chat, and I understand that sometimes it's going to happen, but it's 2 wins over 2 former champions, and she left no doubts. Right? She got finishes, and she was just destructive in both of those. Left zero doubt in our minds. And the scary thing is, this girl's still improving. It's the magnitude of what you do as a fighter as a whole. She carries that flag, right, and represents so much in the sport. Yeah, you can say Larissa Pacheco. You could throw her name out there, and people aren't going to think you're crazy. Kayla Harrison's name is getting thrown out there as one of the best female fighters right now, currently. So to get a win over her and to kind of stop what she had going on, that's pretty massive. But then if you go back to what else she did, it's just they're wins. There's nothing really to that. There's not that much value to it. 2 former champions that a lot of people, had they faced them, probably would not have done well. I think that's enough to make Zhang Weili the fighter of the year.
So, guys, allow me to push back just a little bit here. What about just 2 versus 4? I know UFC has the top athletes most consistently. Not all of them. We all agree that Bellator, PFL, One Championship, Invicta, they have a few shining stars as well. But top to bottom, consistently, it is UFC. And no disrespect to these opponents, but Carla was a big underdog coming into this fight, right? So the odds makers are considered pretty sharp. Joanna, could she have already been thinking retirement on the way? She hadn't even fought in 2 years. And if you look back, I think she was like 3-4 since she lost her title. So does that really eclipse weighing in 4 times, winning 4 times? I believe 3 of them were finishes, and toppling the great Kayla Harrison, who arguably didn't even lose rounds, much less fights. Anybody who wants some?
Well, I'll say this. I think part of it for Larissa, and this might be an unfair criticism, is I feel like her division, too, is working against her, right? Like the women's lightweight division. I mean, some of the girls she fought had good records. I believe she beat somebody that was 7-1, somebody else maybe that was 7-2 and a 5-2, something like that. Those were the finishes. So, I mean, those are obviously pretty decent records. But I think with that division, you don't really know what you're going to get, right? Like the talent pool isn't that deep. So for me, I kind of look at it and I say, okay, well, with that could possibly, and this is not to mean the whole thing, but what she did this year, but I mean, that could possibly, if you were to transfer those to different divisions, I mean, those are the sort of records that we would see in LFA or something like that. Like PFL is doing a very good job of finding people in that division. And I think some of these girls are pretty talented, but I think if you try to compare that to, hey, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Carla Esparza, like that's where it kind of gets me. Where I kind of think sure, she had those 3 wins, but like, is that more impactful than beating Joanna, in a very violent fashion? I don't think so personally.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about 2 historic talents, Joanna Jędrzejczyk and Carla Esparza. They're two of the best 5 fighters that have ever existed at 115 pounds in the sport. And she beat them both in 1 calendar year. I mean, I think that's pretty damn impressive. And yeah, I know Joanna Jędrzejczyk's record towards the end might have been a little bit not great, but keep in mind, every fight is like a title fight. Every fight she's fighting, some of the best in the world. She never took a step back. She never did a climb back up the ladder. She was just constantly stayed at the top. So yeah, in my opinion, I think it was there was an argument there for Larissa, but for me, it was a clear choice that Zhang Weili was the correct one.
I'm going to go out in the woods here, and then all that goes finish up. I know he wants to chime in, but what about just, like the whole season, the way it's compacted? We even talk about like it's the 2022 season, like there's a game or a fight in January and then one in December. They do it all like in 6 months. So like turning it around like that, differing game plans against different types of skill sets that are coming at you. Again, the weight cuts. And I don't know, not to sound cruel and all, because I really think I put it, in our discussion earlier, Zhang Weili's a unit, man. Trust me. She's like, I think the world of her, but we're nitpicking here, right? I feel like she was gifted the title, the opportunities to fight, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, going even back to last year. She had gotten finished by Rose Namajunas, then just got to fight her again in what's considered a deep strawweight division, then gets Joanna again after 2 years. I get it, Danny. Joanna's a stud too, but off 2 years, it just didn't feel like the same. And then Carla off, one of the worst title-winning performances ever. So still, like, I don't know, man. I feel like Larissa did it the hard way, and she just took on the best and overcame it. But yeah, again, how about you, guys? Maybe I'm drowning here.
But she slipped by Kayla Harrison, right? Like we all watched that fight, and when they were reading the scorecards, we didn't really know what was going to happen, right? Where Zhang Weili just completely destroyed her opponents. Plus, you guys are leaving one out. Don't forget, she 10-9 Francis Ngannou at the PI, right? She's already up on him, so that's a 3rd fight that she won. What more do you want from this girl, George? Who else does she have to pick up?
Hey, with that, I got to exit. I just got owned. All right.